2021. How do you look back at this year? Some highs, some lows, but many memories. We had huge expectations heading into 2021. It was called the year of recovery, the year we end this Wuhan virus pandemic. That was the hope. Instead, it's become the year that could have been, the year of missed opportunities. We saw old regimes fall, we saw new leaders rise, we saw superpowers flee, we saw helpless protesters face up to bullets. 2021 was a year like no other. And in the next 15 minutes, we bring you a recap. The highs, the lows, the wins, the failures, 10 things that made 2021 a year to remember. It started with a change in the White House. Donald Trump out, Joe Biden in. But things did not exactly go to plan. Trump supporters gathered at the U.S. Capitol on the 6th of January. They believed the election was rigged. What followed was the biggest challenge to U.S. democracy in decades.
They broke the glass?
Wasn't just America. Democracy was challenged elsewhere too. In India, the national capital was overrun on Republic Day. Protesting farmers rode in on tractors. They clashed with police officers, ultimately reaching the Red Fort. On a day when India had established the rule of law, lawlessness gripped New Delhi. But India survived. Its democratic ethos stood the test of protest and violence. In Myanmar, the people weren't so lucky though. On the 1st of February, the Myanmar army organized a coup. All civilian leaders were arrested and the military took charge. Almost 11 months later, the people of Myanmar are still protesting. Their resolve and courage was one of the highlights of this year. And how can we forget Afghanistan? After 20 years in the wilderness, the Taliban returned. Afghan leaders fled their country. The Americans packed their bags. Kabul was captured, but all hope is not lost. Afghan women have emerged as a beacon of resistance. Covering their protests this year has been a privilege. Different countries, different cultures, but the same story, democracy in distress. The West's Coca-Cola flavored democracy is not universally usable. Countries that adapted to their local flavors survived, others did not. But as we move into the next year, the world and its leaders must emphasize on one key aspect. Democracy as a way of governance is non-negotiable. Much like vaccines this year, non-negotiable. Hands down, this is the biggest vaccination campaign in human history. 184 countries, 9.12 billion doses, almost 40 million shots per day. As we're calling it, a jab of life. But the jab of life came at a cost. Profits for Big Pharma, the big vaccine makers, are making a pandemic windfall. The likes of Pfizer and Moderna, they're earning $1,000 per second. They completely ignored poorer regions like Africa and Latin America. So what happened next should not surprise anyone.
We will continue to see variants emerge. We will continue to see variants of concern around the world, and we must do everything that we can to really limit the spread.
If we're going to take practical solutions, then waiver of intellectual property should be taken seriously.
Not to have equitable distribution of vaccines is not only a question of being immoral, it is also a question of being stupid.
Based upon the information that we have, particularly from South Africa, they have advised WHO that this variant should be classified as a variant of concern. So today we are announcing B11529 as a variant of concern named Omicron.
We had the vaccines, but we did not have a global plan to distribute them. And this was another feature of 2021, the lack of a unified response, not just against the virus, but also the country that exported the virus. In 2021, China's bullying continued. Last year, we were busy fighting COVID, but China was slowly charting its plan for world domination. 2021 was a bonus for them, another year of distractions. This time, their biggest target was Taiwan. Since Friday, China has had close to 100 military plane sorties near Taiwan. On Friday, 38 airplanes flew into Taiwan's air defense zone. On Saturday, the PLA broke that record. They sent 39 aircraft.
我们不会冒进，但绝对不要认为台湾人民会在压力下屈服。我们会持续充实国防，展现自我防卫的决心。
Beijing's claim to the vast majority of the South China Sea has no basis in international law. That assertion treads on the sovereignty of the states in the region.
中方敦促美方立即停止此类侵权挑衅行为，并将继续采取必要措施，坚定捍卫国家主权和安全，维护南海和平稳定。
Same old China threatening Taiwan, fishing in disputed waters and ignoring all criticism, not to mention international laws. The only organized opposition came from the Quad. Their leaders held their first in-person meet on the 24th of September. Joe Biden, Scott Morrison, Narendra Modi and Yoshihide Suga met at the White House. China was not mentioned at the summit, but the optics were enough to send tremors in Beijing. In West Asia, though, tremors seldom remain quiet. An old conflict was reignited this year, Israel versus Palestine. For 11 days, it was carnage. From Gaza, Hamas launched rockets into Israel, and Israel responded in kind. When the dust settled, the human cost was revealed. Over 254 Palestinians and 12 Israelis killed. The price of settling this old conflict, $500 million. We were constantly reporting on this war, the threats, the counter-threats, the reactions. So revisiting the story was not easy.
There are only two ways that you can deal with them. You can either conquer them, and that's always an open possibility, or you can deter them. And we are engaged right now in forceful deterrence.
You never know where the next explosion, where the next rocket, or where the next Israeli airstrike is going to happen.
That was a conventional war. Two rivals on either side. But in 2021, we also fought an unconventional enemy, big tech. What did we learn about them this year? That they're listening, that they're snooping, and they don't care if we know. In early 2021, we got a notification from WhatsApp. It was a new privacy policy, accept it or lose access to WhatsApp. What did this policy mean? Data from WhatsApp could be accessed by Facebook companies like Instagram. It's a big red flag. So Indian users were up in arms. They got ample support from the government, which asked WhatsApp to withdraw the policy. Finally, they relented. They've put the new privacy policy on hold. So your data is safe, at least for the moment. But over in America, things got ugly. Tech CEOs were dragged down to Congress. Some of the most powerful men in the world had no answers to basic questions.
I want to start by asking all three of you if your platform bears some responsibility for disseminating disinformation related to the election.
Chairman, I think our responsibility is to build systems that can help.
Mr. Zuckerberg, I just want a yes or no answer, okay?
Congressman, our responsibility is to make sure that we build effective systems to help fight this
gentleman's choice is not to answer the question. Mr. Pichai, yes or no?
We always feel a deep sense of responsibility, but I think we worked hard. This election effort was one of our most substantive efforts.
Is that a yes or a no?
Congressman, it's a complex question.
Okay, we'll move on. Mr. Dorsey.
Yes, but you also have to take into consideration a broader ecosystem. It's not just about the technology platforms we use.
Simple question, but no straight answers. Towards the end of this year, we learned more about how toxic big tech was, thanks to whistleblower Frances Hogan. Her claims were damning. Facebook knew about the harm it was causing. It knew it was sowing division. It knew that children were depressed after logging in. But Mark Zuckerberg couldn't care less. He was probably busy threatening Australia. Yes, that happened too. For almost a week, Australians could not share news on Facebook. It wasn't a technical glitch, it was revenge. Australia was asking tech giants to pay for news, which is a fair request. But Facebook did not want to. So what did they do? They stopped Australians from viewing or sharing news. Classy from big tech Zuckerberg. And if social media was making people depressed, sports icons were asking us to seek help. One of the better things in 2021, I would say, more awareness on mental health, more people seeking help. And a lot of credit goes to our sporting stars. Naomi Osaka, Simone Biles, they're young and successful. So when they talked, the world listened.
It would be a little bit better to take a back seat, work on my mindfulness, and I knew that the girls would do an absolutely great job, and I didn't want to risk the team a medal for kind of my screw-up.
It's a serious disease that really goes unnoticed, and when you're dealing with the mind and a person's mentality like that, that has to be taken into consideration.
Well, she's a young lady with a lot of pressure upon her. It can happen to any one of us.
I know some of us are going through the same things, and we're always told to push through it, but we're all a little bit older now, and we could kind of speak for ourselves.
And not only did they listen, they agreed. Let's face it, this year has been hard for most of us. It's like the planet is trying to kill us. Climate change, COVID-19, many of us were feeling depressed or anxious. This year, people Googled how to maintain mental health more than ever before. Clearly, they were concerned, and with good reason. In 2021, depression has risen 27%. Anxiety has gone up by 25%. Nothing gets us worked up like a once-in-a-century pandemic. But the good news is, people are seeking help. They're booking therapy sessions. They're talking about mental health. In a year where our bodies were taking a beating, our mind was certainly getting some good attention. If only our planet could get the same focus. Unfortunately, it isn't. 2021 was marked by massive climate catastrophes, biblical floods, stinging droughts, supercharged tornadoes. All of this, of course, cost a lot of money. The 10 biggest climate disasters of this year resulted in damages worth $170 billion. We had heat waves in Canada, flash floods in Germany, bushfires in America. The pictures were extremely compelling, but not compelling enough for our world leaders to act. In late 2021, we had the COP26 summit in Glasgow, or as we like to call it, the Flop 26. 400 private jets landed in Scotland. We had world leaders, we had corporate bigwigs, all of them flying in with a trail of smoke. They came with a message for the planet. And that's all they had. Words, not actions.
It is time to come together for future generations in ways that none of us really ever thought we might have an opportunity to do.
This is no longer a climate conference. This is now a global North greenwash festival. A 2-week-long celebration of business as usual and blah, blah, blah.
That's pretty much what it was. A lot of stunts with little substance. Humanity's campaign against climate change is stuck. Much like this ship was in the Suez Canal. What a meme fest it was. This 400-meter-long ship, ever given, got stuck in the Suez Canal. What followed was the biggest traffic jam in human history. At least 369 ships were waiting behind. Around $9.6 billion worth of trade was halted. And of course, the endless memes. But jokes aside, this was a big lesson for the world. Global trade has too many bottlenecks. And if those bottlenecks close, you may not have ketchup with your burger or cola with your fries. I'm not kidding. In April this year, America had a major ketchup shortage. Most restaurants were opting for packets instead of bottles, and producers simply could not keep up. It was a proper sauce-ageddon. The same thing happened to our appliances and cars. No semiconductors. The shortage began last year, but in 2021, it became much bigger. The auto industry, for instance, lost $210 billion in revenue. You probably couldn't get your favorite phone to, or a new laptop. So going into 2022, we need to make our supply chains more resilient. You cannot depend on one country or one shipping route for that. If you do, your next burger may not have ketchup on the side. Unless, of course, you're Jeff Bezos or Richard Branson, in which case earthly problems don't concern you. 2021 was the year of space tourism. The super rich blasted off into space, took a trip around the earth and came back all smiles. There was one brief effort to keep Jeff Bezos in orbit, but it was never going to work out. This year will always be remembered in the history of space exploration, not just because the private sector joined the race, but because we as a species reached new places. Here's a quick look back.
To all you kids down there, I was once a child with a dream, looking up to the stars. Now I'm an adult in a spaceship with lots of other wonderful adults looking down to our beautiful, beautiful Earth.
My expectations were high and they were dramatically exceeded.
Good orbit injection allows to have more fuel on board of the spacecraft. And therefore, the James Webb Space Telescope can have a long life and therefore bring a lot of exciting science.
Science and perseverance, the two things that made this year memorable. If you combine them, what do you get? Trailblazing startups. 2021 was the year of the unicorn, or unicorns. Entrepreneurs pushed through the pandemic to create billion-dollar success stories. India led the way. 39 Indian startups hit billion-dollar valuations this year. Only the US and China have more unicorns than India now. It's quite an inspirational story. Pandemics are business killers, we know. You have lockdowns, mask mandates, but startups pulled through. They raised $6.1 billion through IPOs this year. Fintech firms raised $10.6 billion. 9 e-commerce companies hit $1 billion evaluation. Makes you wonder, how did tiny startups succeed where big heritage companies failed? Because they innovated. The last 2 years have been all about adapting, cheat codes to circumvent the pandemic. Startups around the world did exactly that, and now they're growing into unicorns. More power to them. WION is now available in your country. Download the app now and get all the news on the move.